Okay, welcome everybody coming. Thank you for attending this session with Shadowserver. What we're going to be going through here is a follow-up. In Shadowserver's effort to try to work with our constituents and help more networks use our cyber civil defense tools and the public benefit tools to help defend their network, we're seeing some rhythms of action we can do. We're very thankful to MYNOG. MYNOG is the Malaysian Network Operations Group. And this, we spoke there, but what happens at the NOGs, and the NOGs are super, super important to the industry, you only have a shorter period of time. So what we're going to be doing is when Shadowserver presents at a NOG or a CERT team event, we'll try to do a follow-up with even more details. So that way, participants who are sitting there and they listen, they go, oh, I need to know more. And then they can sign up to a webinar afterwards. So this is kind of like a new type of outreach program that we're going to be doing. So we want to thank you to the MYNOG coordinators. This was the 11th one that they've had in Malaysia. Go to the mynog.org if you want to go, if you're in Malaysia, or even in your ASEAN, because a lot of people travel to different countries to visit the different NOGs to meet their friends. And what are the NOGs? Well, you can find out more. Go to the big organizers. Here's the crew in Southeast Asia, Asia, and South Asia who formed this AP NOG. So this is a group that they all work together. They share, different speakers come around. Shadowserver staff speaks at these sort of activities and events. And it's really important to build your network of colleagues and peers. Who do you call when you need help, right? One of the most important security tools you have is your network of people that you can contact, you can chat with, and talk to, right? So that's really important with it. So go to apnog.org, look at, Philippines is coming up with the PH-NOG. Thai NOG happened last month in May, right? So you got these different events with it, right? So what we're going to be doing today, we're going to walk through, for people who don't know what the Shadowserver Foundation is, we're going to kind of talk through it so that basically you kind of know who we are, what we do, what we've been doing for the past 20 years. And then we're going to dive right into like fixing things. There is a couple of law enforcement takedowns we'll walk through. How do you actually go through and find the 9/11 S5 malware on your network, right? And then we're going to go through the special reports that are coming out with Operational Endgame. Several reports are out now, right? So these are problems that could be on your network with computers that are infected that you need to go hunt and find, right? And then, of course, you'll say, okay, how do I sign up then? If you're not already signed up to Shadowserver. So we'll walk through that part. And then we'll just talk about, what happens after a lot of organizations sign up. You get overwhelmed. You go like, wow, I didn't know that I had this many problems on my network. And we'll walk through some techniques that I've used in the past when I've run networks, and I've used Shadowserver to actually help secure and lock it down. So again, what I'll do right now is who my name is. My name is Barry Green. I'm an architect. I'm a resiliency architect. I build things. I build technology. I run networks. These days, right now, I'm working with Shadowserver inside the Shadowserver team. I've used Shadowserver for 20 years. In other words, every network I've run on, I've used Shadowserver to my advantage to actually protect my networks. And it works. I'll give you some stories with it. And I love it because it works and it's cost effective, right? So we'll talk through that. Now, in the chat, what we'll do here is, everything here. If you don't know, and this is interesting, we're finding out, when we talk about security stuff in the industry, we use this protocol, the traffic light protocol. And because people will get confused because different countries will say, well, this is secret, top secret, this is classified, and we get confused. So as an industry, we've decided to use the traffic light protocol and evolve it. The organization Forum for Incident Response Security Teams, right? That's first.org, a location you should bookmark, and they take care of the standard on this. So everything in this presentation is TOP clear, which means you can share it all over. This would be, all public information can share with it. And this is where every now and then you'll hear like TLP red. Oh, you notice in there, it's classified. Keep it within a security group who's doing an investigation. So this is how we take care of confidentiality. And what's our goal here? What we're trying to do? We want to help your organization and you sign up to Shadowserver so you get the free reports. This is one of the best security reports out there, and I keep track of the industry. I keep track of different attack surface commercial tools. I look at how much money they charge you, and they don't come close to the free reports that Shadowserver delivers. That's the irony to it. So here's free reports. You don't need to pay to get your attack surface to find out what the bad guys can see on your network, and then point you to the tools to help you plug it into your DevOps and SecOps tools. All right. So if you got Grafana, plug it into there. If you have Splunk, plug it into there. If you have, any of the other tools like Intel MQ, right? And then help you mitigate the risk. In other words, clean up stuff on your network so you don't get hit with miscreants. Because what we see in ASEAN, so this is a chart of ASEAN. This is the number of organizations who are actually currently subscribed to Shadowserver reports. And you kind of notice in this and say, oh, there's a lot of IP space that is green. That's because there's a lot of large telcos who are signed up to it. But when you look at it, that's 185 networks, autonomous system numbers, versus over 6,000 that are not getting the reports. So you may not be a big network. You may just have a /24 IPv4 space, but you may be one of the most critical infrastructures for the finance community, right? So we want to get you subscribed so you can help safeguard the network. So this is kind of like our goal of what we're trying to do. Who is Shadowserver? All right, Shadowserver. Shadowserver has been around for 20 years. It's a nonprofit. It focuses on getting trusted communities plugged together and getting reports and information out to the community. The reports that we provide out are at no cost. And that no cost is taken care of because the Shadowserver Alliance, these are organizations who have the same sort of alignment and mission as Shadowserver. In other words, they want a threat-free internet. In other words, they have, if you're a business and you want to have a safer internet, then Shadowserver is, through the Shadowserver Alliance is one of the ways to actually help promote that. It's nonprofit in 2 locations, in the United States and in Europe through Netherlands, right? So it's nonprofit in 2 different locations because we get funded from different parts of the world. We share information with the internet defenders at no cost, because we believe that if we're going to make a difference out there, then we need to get the tools to people to go fix the problem, right? So that's a core thing with it. And then we tend to punch above our weight. Shadowserver is quite effective in helping law enforcement, other organizations to actually do a lot of impact on the industry that is measured and tracked with very few people. Right? It's pretty interesting with it. And now it's 20 years that Shadowserver has been active and working within the community, providing these free tools and things like that. There's 3 core audiences we work with on the national level. We work with the national CSIRTs, right, in different countries. In some countries, there are multiple national CSIRTs that we work with. On the network level, we got over 9,000 network owners right now, and we're going to be increasing that. That's part of this talk right now, is let's increase the number of network owners so they can go out there and use the free tools to lock down their network. And then we work with law enforcement. Law enforcement, a lot of times when you see like a takedown exercise, you look at the fine print, and down at the bottom, you'll see like the sinkhole was being managed by Shadowserver, or the domains were taken down by Shadowserver. And it's very quiet, very at the end, but the mechanisms that we use to protect our data and our data privacy issues, how we take care of the data has helped law enforcement over the years, because if you do a takedown and you're trying to arrest somebody, you need to make sure the things you do are admissible in court, that sort of thing. What we do, big sinkhole operations. In other words, whenever, and you'll hear about it with the 9/11 S5 takedown with it. So we got this massive sinkhole infrastructure. We got scanning that happens every day. We're talking about billions of addresses in V4 and V6. There's a mechanism that we use for doing V6 takedowns, right? And then we have sensors, right? We got tons and tons of sensors, honeynuts, different probes, and these are deployed through different projects. And this feeds into our system of things. And then we have a massive sandbox infrastructure. We're talking about, a million samples a day, because we have a lot of endpoint protection and antivirus companies. They peer with Shadowserver. So in other words, if I'm an antivirus or endpoint protection, if I connect binaries and I got 100, I'll send 100 up to Shadowserver, and then Shadowserver will give me 100 I don't have. And that sort of synchronization, just expands the ability to do that. And this is all geared towards, again, network owners, CERT teams, law enforcement. And there's a whole bunch of other things that Shadowserver does that we'll cover in other webinars, but these are the key things. So when you put this all together, this infrastructure of all these different elements together, this goes into the reporting that goes to you. And this reporting is what you would call, in the industry today, they now call this attack surface, right? But a lot of attack surface companies, all they do is they just scan your network. Here, Shadowserver is like, oh, here's malware that's inside your network from a sinkhole. Here's things from NetFlow feeds from the CSPs, right? So there's a whole bunch more that Shadowserver does to put into the reports to send to you to help you mitigate things in your network. And then it's expanding out. There's a new DDoS API. There's some new tools for investigative teams. And now with the Shadowserver Alliance, the Shadowserver Alliance is actually feeding in and saying, hey, why don't we try this tool? Well, how about we write the script in this way? So we're getting a lot of peer support as we develop these tools through the Shadowserver Alliance. Again, the focus, there's a lot of information that flows into an organization, but our focus is the operational, the SOC staff, the incident response team, the people who go out there and fix the things. There are others out there like executives and the board and defenders and other, hunters and things like that. That's not really the Shadowserver niche. Our niche is, there's a problem on your network. Let's go find it. Let's go fix it before a bad guy uses it. That's the core thing with it. And the reports float between, 125 to 150 different types of reports. There are special reports that come out there, right? And we have all this listed out, all the details on the different reports. We'll talk through that. But let's show it in action. I mean, a lot of times we'll talk about the data, but let's show it in action. So 9/11 S5 takedown. This was a massive VPN proxy system that criminals used and for years. And some of the big break-ins, bad guys would rent VPN space on this system and go out there and get it. So, and the details in there from the U.S. Department of Justice. The one key thing about this is this was a great international effort. Many different organizations, many different countries work together to actually go out there and take down the infrastructure and then arrest some of the leaders on this. So that's the nice thing about this was that sort of ability with it, right? Now, what is it? It was simply a lot new is the 9/11 VPN system, right? And what they would do is they would go out there and put free VPN. So I got a free VPN. I want to go out there and get my football match in Europe from Thailand, for example, right? So I get my and I need to bypass the country limits, and so I download the free VPN. Now, what I didn't know is that free VPN had a backdoor into it and would turn my computer into a proxy, right? So now I had a proxy set up on my computer, and I didn't know that. And some of them actually were upfront says, oh yeah, by doing this, you're becoming part of a proxy network. And then some software out there, they put the back doors in and they loaded it up, and we're still finding the different types of software that was put the back doors in. So this is what they did. This is kind of like, compromised devices out there of this massive VPN system, right? So, and the services are offered on, bad guys would pay, it was on dark web presence. And then finally, it started to get dismantled, starting last year, and then as a coordinated effort, and then actually led to the arrest of the key people. Now, what happens on these is Shadowserver quietly behind the scenes, the law enforcement say, hey, can you sinkhole? So we take the command and control and capture all the details of the command and control. It could be IP addresses, it could be domain names, and we plug it into a sinkhole. So instead of the residential node going to a command and control that is controlled by the bad guys, it's now controlled by Shadowserver. And then that data is fed into the community that's doing the work with it. In other words, it goes to you if you subscribe. So that's one of the aspects. We want to help you fix your network. But then within the investigative team, they also can get the data to say, okay, are we actually tracking it down? Are we getting the victims cleaned up, right? That's the idea around it, right? Now, here you see in this, it's in the Shadowserver report. So we put a note out, again, right in the beginning, you sign up to the public mailing list, it will say, hey, a new report is out, right? And in this case, we put the identifier in an existing report. So there's an existing report, which is the HTTP events, right? So in the HTTP events, you'll look for the data point that says 9/11 SOX proxy. So if you pull up one of the reports, you'll see it. Now, this is also public out there. You can see how many infected out there. This is globally, right? There's a lot of infections out there of these VPNs. They're not controlled by the bad guys anymore, but they're on your network, right? And if somebody downloaded and put it on your network to bypass your firewall, that's a problem. And you just look in ASEAN. Oh, okay. Well, that's interesting. There's a lot in ASEAN there, right? So we want to be able to clean it up. So again, the way it works is you can have here's somebody inside your network, and you think of this. All right. I'm bored at work. I want to watch some TV, but my security policies block it. So I'll go download a free VPN service. And there you go. I bypass the firewall. I can watch TV while I'm bored at work. And the free VPN, of course, has a backdoor into it. This is why you want to clean it up. It's a VPN inside a secure network, and you want to, that's why you want to get it cleaned up, right? So this is kind of like an example of that, right? So now, next one, same thing, operational endgame, law enforcement all working together. So here, even bigger law enforcement effort, you run out of Europol. So if Europol is a European collaboration of law enforcements, and they've been running these operations to take down bad guy infrastructure, right? So here, Shadowserver is a participant of that. They wanted to put people on the investigative team. Now, in this case, Shadowserver doesn't have the sinkhole. Shadowserver didn't do the sinkhole operation, right? But what we do on these is we get the data as part of the team, and then we send out special reports. Right, so we're sending out special reports. So here's an example of a special report. Smoke Loader was some malware, and the malware is out there all over with Smoke Loader. And you can go out there and say, okay, Smoke Loader, here's how I go through and get it, find it on my network and then get it fixed, right? So this is malware that's inside. So this is what's different with Shadowserver. Shadowserver will help you find out devices that are inside your firewall. So in other words, this is malware inside your network reporting out. So in this case, if I want to find Smoke Loader, I will pull down a report. So here, the event sinkhole, right? And I put the name, whatever I is. So this is, I took one example and I pulled the report down from one of the national CSIRT teams. And then I just did a search and then reduced the window. So here, there's a lot of details that is provided for each event, each incident here. I just kind of reduced it down and anonymized it. So you can kind of see, you would pull it on here and you would have the IP addresses. Here's the source IPs. Here's the destination IPs. Here's the autonomous system numbers. Here's the details on it. So you would have the information that you can go out there and find where they are at on your network, and detailed timestamps. So in other words, if you have to go to the firewall log to find it, you can get the detailed timestamps. Now you can get this information via the email, and you get links to the data that you can download, or what a lot of organizations are doing is use the API, and you just do an API call, right? So you got both options there that you can use with it. So you look at Smoke Loader, there's a lot of devices out there on the Smoke Loader part. right? And then when you look at in Southeast Asia, you can see, yep, smoke alerters sitting there on a lot of different networks. So this is to be, you take the special report, you go look at it, you clean it up, and then, okay, I don't have malware sitting in my network that a bad guy can take over afterwards, right? So here's two more special reports, the System BC and the ICE-D, and there'll be a few more coming out with this as operational endgames shares and say, okay, here's the next one. So this is, again, sign up to the public alias, and the public alias will help you, say, hey, here's a new special report. Here's how you find the details in your Shadowserver reports. You go look for it, check your network, clean up the network, reduce your risk, right? How much does that cost you? Time. This is not something you pay for. This is just basically, let's take the time, clean up my network, and get it done. Now, how do we sign up at Shadowserver? So those of you who are not Shadowserver right now, let's find out how you do it. So these sort of webinars are all about helping you get the most out of Shadowserver, and we're also trying to help people manage the overload, because there's so much security things that happen and get alerted to you, and we want to be able to reduce the risk, right? So key thing here is we want to, what Shadowserver is trying to do in 2024 is help our constituents, help our peers increase your cybersecurity capabilities. In other words, what can you do? Your capacity, how much can you do, and your confidence. Like, yes, I have the confidence to act. I can clean it up, right? And we're doing that by expanding the number of subscribers, the constituents. You're our peers. We serve you. That's why we call you constituents, right? We empower those constituents so you can leverage Shadowserver to reduce your risk, reduce your digital safety risk. And then several of the organizations we encourage to join the Shadowserver Alliance, because you want a threat-free internet. So join us, fund us, and that sets up the free capabilities and enhances our capabilities, right? Now, where do you go? You go to shadowserver.org, look for subscribe, right? And then you're going to be asked who you are, what's your email address, what's your organization, your autonomous system number, IP addresses, domain names, and then some other details, because we only send Shadowserver information to the organizations that are authorized to get it. In other words, it's your autonomous system, it's your IP addresses, it's your domain names. We don't send that to any of your competitors or any other, you can't buy that from us. Many times people say, hey, I'll fund Shadowserver, but give me all your data. We say, thank you very much, no thank you, right? That's the Shadowserver policy with it, right? So you sign up these details. We'll check things out, we'll dialogue with you, and then get you set up with the reports. It's not that hard to do, because Shadowserver, we have so much information on what's going on, being a huge, giant, data lake of what we have. We can check people out pretty quick to get you set up on your reports, get the API set up. And the data sharing, right? This is what I've talked about, the data sharing. If you're network B, you only get B. You can't go around and say, hey, give me A, give me C, give me D. That's not how it works, except for if you're a legitimate national CSIRT team. So we work with all the national CSIRT teams have authorized, they've gone through the open CSIRT process of how do you protect the information. They are plugged into a national authority somehow, a regulator or a different institution. And those are the organizations we work with. And they get the country data set, right? So, for instance, in Malaysia, cybersecurity Malaysia, which is the MyCert and the Cyber 999 get the data sets as an example, because they are authorized with it, right? So that's the sort of thing with it. Now, when you send a report over to us, Shadowserver then starts setting up tools. We set up the mailing list for you so we can email the reports over to you. We set up different report types. We have 3 main report types we start out with. One is all your autonomous system, and that automatically includes all the IPv4 and v6 that we see underneath the ASN, right? Then IP addresses. Now, they could be the same as your ASN, or they could be cloud resources or other IP addresses. So you remember v4 and v6, because we do v6, right? And then all your domains, because the domains are important, because if a domain pops up in malware from some command and control or a bot, then those are not scanned. Those are from the malware repository and the sandboxing work, or from a sinkhole operation or things like that. So you include your domains too, so you can get that sort of reporting into us. And then in sort of how we set things up, we set up, here's the organization, here's the mail list, here's who we talk to. And you can keep this updated, right? And then we set up reports on the autonomous system, find out, every quarter we send out a summary that says, here's everything we have on you, and you can check on that and then update it. We're constantly updating. We have a default set of reports, but there's a bunch more reports out there. So every now and then you check and say, hey, Shadowserver, what reports do you have me signed up for? Which ones am I missing, right? And then we would, add and tune to the reports to your needs. There's a chart that we use to track. Sometimes we get our constituents and say, hey, can you send me my weekly chart? What's it look like? How many different security problems do I have? This one right here is from a country level. So there's a lot out there. And then API keys. You get the email reports, and I've used the email reports for years. Networks I ran and take care of things, and they do work. But now with the APIs, it makes life so much easier, right? So sign up for the APIs. And good API security is you don't have one API key you share everywhere. Say, okay, here's my Grafana for my NOC. All right, here's my Splunk access. Here's my Maltego tool. Here's my Intel MQ tool. So that would be like 4 API keys, right? So that's encouraged, right? So it's no big deal for a Shadowserver to set up API keys for each of the applications and follow good API best common practices. So you go out there and do that. All the details on our API are on our public site. So you go over here and you sign up to that to get access. You look for on GitHub. So we have the Shadowserver Foundation on GitHub. That's our wiki space, right? So you can sign up there, and so you can actually play around with it. And we're making it easier. One of the things that's in our queue to get done is the dashboard, the public dashboard. We're going to set things up where anybody can access the public dashboard data, right? So that will be set up, and that will be one of the, if you want to look at like a cool tool to put into your NOC, then you can say, okay, here's a Shadowserver dashboard, and I'll make my own dashboard, and you can put that in your NOC and say, okay, here's a global threat factor, right? So we're setting that up, and that will be like a location on our wiki here, so you can actually see that. What's some of the usage examples with this? Over in Akamai, I got this permission to use on the Akamai side. Akamai is an edge company, right? So they got like thousands and thousands and thousands of servers on the edge. That's a lot of work to keep track of all those thousands and thousands of servers. So years ago, Akamai started using Shadowserver, and they run it through a script. And basically in the script, it says, okay, let's look for all of our edge services. So they put all the IP addresses and autonomous systems into the Shadowserver reports. And then if this particular server is got ports open that should not be open, right? So in other words, like a lot of companies, they say, here's the server and here's exactly what it should be. Only these ports, only these crypto keys, only these things. In other words, it's very strict. Now, if all of a sudden new things pop up, immediately it gets flagged, a ticket, it gets done. And then a company like Akamai and others would then pull that server out because it's in violation, right? And then you go out there and troubleshoot and figure out what happened, right? Was it misconfiguration? Did something happen to it? Did somebody touch the box like they shouldn't touch the box? Or could there be something else like a security issue? The key thing is, how much did that cost them? It's a script. It's a playbook, like here's the script internally of pulling the server out. That's all automated. And it's Shadowserver, and Shadowserver is doing it anyways, right? So it's a really cost-effective way to keep in track of thousands and thousands of servers. So cloud operators, edge operators, this is a kind of cool way of keeping track of your infrastructure, where you can say, here's exactly what it should be, and then use Shadowserver data sets to actually make sure you're in compliance. And this is where you see with some of the tools with it. I mean, there's tools that will be added to our wiki. Intel MQ, you'll see a update on Intel MQ. We did a webinar with that with Aaron from the Intel MQ team, right? So we'll have a webinar, how do you take Shadowserver, integrate with that. Intel MQ, if you're looking for a tool to start with, this is a cool tool to start with because it's open source. You can download it and use it, integrate Shadowserver into it, integrate a whole bunch of different Mist feeds, integrate a whole bunch of other data sets, and then I'll pull it all together. Again, how much does it cost you? Find a server instance, right? And then download the tools with it, right? So again, there's so much you can do to help secure your network where you don't have to go out there and start buying this and looking for a budget. So those organizations who say, hell, I don't have budget for my tools, there's a bunch of Shadowserver, Intel MQ, a bunch of other tools that can help you out with it. We got other organizations who got data lakes and using Elasticsearch and tools like that. So we got those locations out there. And then we got Splunk integration, and Splunk integration is going to improve. I got a new Shadowserver volunteer coming on board, Jose. He's going to be helping us actually leverage the Splunk tools. And so this is a theme that you're here that we're doing right now, is really the DevOps, SecOps integration of Shadowserver into our constituents' operations. If you just use simple log, there's other log analysis tools. You can convert our APIs into the common event format, which sucks into any of the login tools out there for login forensics, all right? And this is all out there too on the details. And look at our dashboard, all right? So we're gonna do another webinar where we dive into like, how do you explore our dashboard? But our dashboard goes out there and gives like, here's what's being exploited. Like for instance, in this particular case, this goes out there and says, what's the different CVEs that are currently exploited known? You notice a lot of these are popping up as IoT sort of devices out there. Now, if you get overwhelmed with all the Shadowserver stuff and you need to tune it down, you can say, hey, can you turn on Delta mode? So a lot of organizations, because they don't want to get all these emails every single day, they say, turn on Delta mode. And what Delta mode does is once a week, you get everything. So once a week, you get everything. And then if there's a diff, like new events pop, then you get updates only on those that are new out there. So that way, if you got something that I haven't fixed yet, like I got a bunch of SMP I haven't fixed yet. I got OpenSSH that I should be fixing. I got Telnet I need to fix. I got TFTP I need to fix. Those haven't changed. So those pop up once a week. But then if I got a new report coming in and said, hey, here's new malware on your system, I want to know that as soon as it happens because I want to clean that up, right? So that's the value of Delta mode. It helps you manage some of the information. So now let's rethink some of the cyber risk stuff, right? Because people get overwhelmed when they first sign up to Shadowserver. Says, wow, there's so much stuff out there. Don't worry. The best common practices, they're not hard. They're not expensive. They take time, persistence, believe me, right? So number one, you don't need to pay to subscribe to any of the security threat services, right? Just start with Shadowserver, because so many people will knock on your door and say, hey, I got a great service. You should pay for my service. Start with Shadowserver, because if you can't take something that's as valuable as Shadowserver and start working and fixing the problems on your network with that, there's no point paying for anything, because the key thing is to get in the habit, because you don't need to buy the expensive services because, Shadowserver has already gone out there. So all this is free, right? What we need is habits where you can act, right? So let's give an example of that. So me, 2012, I go out to Indonesia. I'm going out there to help turn a telecom company around, right? But of course, I'm out there looking at the network. I go like, holy cow, I got threat actors all over my network. But my boss is saying, goal number one, let's go turn the company around. Let's make money, right? So you're not going to get a security team. So I go, okay, how can I get the security team? Now, being a good Indonesian company, what they do is they hire college kids right out. So they have these college kids come in and says, oh, give me a couple of these college kids. And I take the college kids and says, you're going to become security gurus. Here's what we do. We're going to start with one Shadowserver report a week, and we're going to go out there and fix the network. We're going to go out there and find the bad guys and get them off the network. All right. So notice, brand new person, right? Somebody who doesn't know anything about security. They're computer science graduates. They come into the company, so the cost is low. And what did we do? Within a 6-month period, we found nation state actors and cyber criminals and people doing fraud on the network, and we got them off the network, right? 2 kids, Shadowserver, right? Because what I do is take these engineers, right, and say, here's the reports, here's the details of reports. And each one of the reports that Shadowserver has a lot of details about it. And also, here's how you go out there and ask more questions to find out what's going on with this risk. So they would go out there and ask more things with the risk. But we had lots of reports. So we said, don't worry, one at a time, right? So, don't panic. We take one report, who was like critical, all right? Pick the report. We review the risk. Let's go find it on the network. Oh, we have 13 different devices that have, TFTP open. We should not have TFTP open on our network, okay? Let's go out there and mitigate the risk. Let's do the change. Let's update the configuration. Let's plug in ACLs. Let's check the software version, right? Then let's write the policy. Okay, somehow we allowed these TFTP to actually get open. All right, let's make the policy. So the company, here's what we do to make sure that we never do this again. Let's eliminate the risk. Let's get that risk down with it. All right, so I teach them how to write the policy. Then we ask, could somebody have used that TFTP to get into my network? Probably. Let's go out there and do an investigation. And then we start digging, right? And we found several of the state actors. That's how they got in, right? And we go like, okay, let's trash them down. All right, and then take a pause, go back, pick another report next week by week, one report a week, right? So we had a huge list at the beginning, and then every week knocked it down, knocked it down, knocked it down. These 2 engineers, they learn more, they talk to more people, right? They plug in communities like this, like we're doing right now. We plug you in, and all of a sudden, within 6-month period, we're just cleaning up the network. How much did that cost? 2 engineers right out of college, Shadowserver reports, action, pace of action. If you can't do this, there's no point in buying any commercial tool. If you can't do this, there's no point in hiring a contractor. This is really simple sort of things to actually clean up your network. So let's do an example of one of these, right? So here's a report from a live network. Simple network management protocol should never be open on your network. I should never be able to see it, but so many networks out there, you leave SNMP wide open to the world. And what does SNMP do when you open it up publicly? Oh, here's the equipment type. Here's the version number of the software. That's all public now. So now if I'm a bad guy, I go like, oh, check this out. Cisco Catalyst 4500 L3 switch. Here's the version number of the software. Let me go look up Cisco's vulnerabilities. Here's a vulnerability. Let's go to the dark web. Hey, is there a break-in tool for that Cisco 4500 switch? Oh, yeah, here. I got a break-in tool. Boom. I'm in the network. I know exactly which one to go after. If the SNMP port is open, then they're probably going to have the Telnet port or the SSH port open to it too. And I can get into that now, right? So this is an example of things that a lot of the bad guys use, right, to get into a network. They'll look for easy exploitable paths. A lot of times you hear about ransomware threat actors just using phishing and things like that. That's easy. If the phishing doesn't work, they use an exploitable path, right? And that's where this comes out. So it's the simple sort of things. Back in my military days, back in the 80s, we called this preventive maintenance inspection, PMIs. And if you wanted to find out if a unit was really, really, really good at what they were doing, then you made sure the PMI, the preventive maintenance, was done every day. You look at the logs. And that's all we're doing. This reduces your risk big. You can get 80% of your risk on a network reduced down just by doing simple things like this with tools like Shadowserver. The next 20% becomes harder because you're going out and doing a whole bunch of other things. But what's ironic is people concentrate on, here's the tools you need to buy to go after the 20%, but they don't do the 80%, right? So let's kind of go through with that. Now, when you do this, also don't try to do too much. This is a little chart I taught in the past from the 4 disciplines of execution. And one of the problems is somebody will see a report like Shadowserver says, oh, there's so much to do, let's do everything at once. That's wrong. Don't try to do everything at once, because the more goals you have, the less you're going to get done. So you pick 2 to 3 things, get it done, complete, check. Then you move on to the next 2 to 3 things, check. Next 2 to 3 things. If you try to do 10 things at once, you may get 1 done. If you try to do like 20 things because the boss says, I need to get it all done right now, it doesn't happen. This is too much with it. So you think simple goals, pace, weekly action that cleans up your network, right? And it's not just you on your team. Remember, different teams can get Shadowserver reports. You can have an email to the network team and security team, product team, abuse team, get the APIs to each of these teams. So it's not going into just one organization. You can send it to multiple organizations with it. The other thing to remember is if Shadowserver sees it, the bad guys see it. Again, if Shadowserver sees it, the bad guys see it. So again, 80% of your risk you can knock down just by doing simple sort of cleanup that a Shadowserver daily report will provide to you. Now, let's look at like some of the, this is real risk. This is yesterday, I took these screenshots, right? So sinkholes. This is stuff that from sinkhole operations, different countries, this is how many threats are out there. There's thousands of threats across there. These are things that need to be cleaned up because these are infections. These are malware. This is, botnets that are inside networks that need to be cleaned up, right? This is all off the public dashboard. These are infected and compromised devices. They are a risk to your network. If you find these on your network and they're in the Shadowserver reports, you need to get it cleaned up because they're infected, right? Scans, these are the scans that go on, V4, V6, right? Scans, you can see, all right? There's a lot out there. I mean, in Singapore, 1.2 million risk picked up by the scans. These are vulnerabilities. These are boxes that have exploitability, right? So if you're looking for like the next thing, this is why bad guys are succeeding left and right. They're succeeding all the time because they just run a scans. Oh, wow. It's easy to break into an organization in Singapore because they're not fixing the basics, right? So these are risks to your network, right? And all over, right? You can see each one of them, right? This last one, DOS amplification. These are devices being used to do DDoS somewhere in the world. OT, right? You got a couple of colleagues of mine who do specialize in OT. OT is critical infrastructure that are like power plants, water purification plants, things like that. These are critical infrastructure out there. And OT should never appear on the internet. And one of the things that Shadowserver did 2 years ago is we worked with the European Union and we started actually putting in scans for OT devices. So if you specialize in OT and you have a way that you can say this OT device should never appear on the internet, you could just email into Shadowserver and Shadowserver will go and add it to the scan, right? And then it's a way of detecting here's an OT specialized device that should never appear on the internet. But there's a bunch of them out there. Let's go shut down a water plant or a sewage plant or electrical plant, that sort of thing with it, right? Then there's websites are compromised, right? So these are websites that are actually been broken into and being used by bad guys. Go to this website and get infected because I planted it in a website, and when you go to the website, it infects you. That sort of thing going on with it. Now, with all of this, our buddies over at Vulncheck, this is one of our colleagues and peers in the community, as they were launching their service to help organizations actually knock down the critical threats that are being exploited with their tool, they did a survey. Said, what's the world look like? Who gets the information out to people as fast as possible, the critical threats? And one of the things that they were not surprised, but we were surprised in Shadowserver was that Shadowserver is number one. In other words, the work that we've been doing to say, here's a vulnerability and get it out to you through the public mailing list, through the social media to say, here, there's an issue, go fix this now. Go fix it quick, right? It's coming from Shadowserver. And we're just getting started. We're just accelerating this sort of pace of operation. So this is where you go to your team and says, how can we use this tool in your team, right? Because if it pops up on the Shadowserver stuff, I can reduce the risk so I don't get hit, right? Then you ask your vendors, hey, are you part of the Shadowserver Alliance? Or you just want to make money from me? Right? Why don't you join the Alliance and help knock down the threat, right? You know, and they can join in that. And then you ask your telcos, your ISPs and clouds and say, hey, how are you using Shadowserver? We got some of them who are raising their hand and saying like, hey, I'll come on and speak. I'll show how we use Shadowserver in our organization as a telco or a cloud operator, you know, and we'll get these stories as part of our webinar series so you can see what other people do with it, you know. So ask these questions, what to do with the data set. So now we'll get to the question part. But one quick hint with this, as you set up Shadowserver, you get the reports described. This isn't something I've done in every organization because things change inside our organization. So one of the things I do is I'll set up an internal alias, right? So I'm at company, like say if Synkey.org, I'll set up Shadowserver-champions at Synkey.org. And then I'll have different people within the team sign up to that alias. So that way, if Shadowserver needs to get an update into my team, right, it goes to an alias versus an individual who may have got promoted or may have left the company. So this is one little tool with it, right? So, you know, and then other thing I would do is set up an internal chat tool. Like if you're using Slack or you're using WebEx or whatever, you set up a tool that says the Shadowserver team. So everybody who's using Shadowserver inside your company, they can say, hey, can we get Shadowserver to do this? Can we get Shadowserver to do that? Right? So this is the sort of internal tool and that I've done in the past. And it's not just, remember, it's not just, you know, one group, you know, talk about the infrastructure protection team, the customer space, IT department. If you have MSSP integration, these are all different things that you could do with the Shadowserver within your organization. You can actually use it to enhance your security services to your customers with it, right? Again, sign up to reports. The other tool out there is, and this is something if you're US or even if you're not US, one of the things the United States does is, in the CISA, is they have known exploitable vulnerabilities that they identify, and then they give orders to any government institution, say, you need to go clean this up right now. Shadowserver, we put this in to make it easy. So when you get this order out there, you can then look at your reports and say, this is on the KEV list, the known exploitable vulnerabilities. We got to go fix this one first, right? So it gives you a way of kind of like, what do I fix today? This is on the KEV list. I'm going to have CISA, you know, send me nastygrams to say, hey, go fix this problem. I don't want that nastygram. I'm going to fix this tonight, you know, put it into the upgrade cycle tonight. So again, sign up to the mailing list, right? Get your report. And again, the actions we go here, subscribe, and we'll send this out as a follow-up, you know, and this will help you out. So now what we're going to do is stop the share, and we're going to open up for questions. So if you have questions, drop in the questions. If you have comments, you can pop into the chat, and we'll get the things in there. First one, Jarkin's asking for a report that would assist in identifying that is exposed in 911 proxy backdoor network. Would we need to request a special report? So what happens with that one, the 911 proxy is part of the reports now. The special reports, if you missed it, all you need to do is open up a ticket with Shadowserver. You go to send an email to contacts at shadowserver.org and say, hey, can you send me my special reports again? All right, a ticket gets open, we send you this updated special reports, right? Every now and then, like what we're doing with Operational Endgame, it says, here's a special, here's an update to a special, here's another special, and then we'll, you know, about a week later, we'll go out there and send like a new update to everybody in case people missed it, because sometimes people miss it. So that's a good question. Thanks for asking that, Jarkin. So again, just email, we open up a ticket, we send you the special reports. Other questions? Okay. Well, now, like anything here, what we're going to be doing right now is